Hi, folks. Thomas Henson here with the Big Data Beer team, and I've got my friend Brett here. We're here to talk today about the Cloudera Hortonworks merger. So it's going to be an amazing time. So make sure that you stick around so that you can hear kind of what's going on from a business perspective, how this is going to affect the Hadoop market. And then in the end, we're going to talk about what our predictions are. Not anybody else's, not any other analyst, your analyst here at the Big Data Beer channel. So tune in, find out right after this.
Merger of equals. October 3rd, one of the biggest things, one of the most shocking things I've seen in the big data world in the last couple of years happened. Cloudera and Hortonworks became a merger of equals. Now, it's an interesting term, merger of equals. What's very interesting, it's a $5.2 billion acquisition. Billion with a B, yeah, one of these, right? But the cool thing is, most of the time when you see these big mergers, it's a large company buying a smaller company, whether it's a startup or a company that's still growing, trying to become solvent. But this was two companies that honestly were struggling from a cash flow standpoint, from a revenue standpoint, coming together. And they're calling it a merger of equals, but really, let's see. So the Cloudera shareholders are going to own 60% of the company, and the Hortonworks shareholders are going to own 40% of the company. And then Cloudera's CEO and CFO still get to retain their leadership positions. So, Thomas, what do you think about this? I mean, it kind of took me by surprise on Wednesday.
Yeah, I mean, so just laying all that out, it's one company still kind of acquiring another one. So, there's differences, right? A little bit. So if you really look at it, kind of like you were saying, there's a little more value in Cloudera, and that kind of shakes out some of that. I think this is kind of huge news too. The real question, the elephant in the room, right? The elephant in the room is, when you see something like this happen just from a business perspective, that means that, one, they're probably not doing as well as they would like to from a cash flow perspective. Like you said, being a startup's hard, right? Everything's not always glorious, and ping pong tables and everybody having fun, right? You gotta sell something at the end of the day. Another thing too is you're kind of seeing it too that there are other forces at play that they're competing with. So what they're doing is they're banding together, not just from a cash flow perspective, but also to be able to team up and tag team against other competitors. And I would say, some of those big competitors are, probably, if you look at it from the perspective of the cloud, right? So if you look at Azure, AWS, and Google Cloud Platform, kind of what they have and their kind of homemade baked, solutions for, the Hadoop ecosystem. We'll say Hadoop, but people understand on our channel, we're not just talking about Hadoop and MapReduce, right? We're talking about the ecosystem. So whether it be Spark, Yarn, that whole piece. So if you look at it, AWS, they've got a lot of things that compete with a lot of what Hortonworks and Cloudera have. I mean, even if you look at from a streaming analytics perspective, Kinesis, right? It's a huge play against Kafka and some of the other streaming platforms that both Cloudera and Hortonworks use. So you're seeing that as a huge competitor, and I think that they just haven't dwindled and haven't taken away enough share from the enterprise data warehouse. People are kind of slow to merge and kind of move away from it. I mean, they're eroding it too. So don't get me wrong. I've talked about it. On my YouTube channel, I've talked about it here, that market's slowly dwindling away, but they haven't been able to capture it as much as they probably want to. And now, teaming up, it kind of gives them the opportunity to go against those competitors.
Yeah, and both these are publicly traded companies, so we have access to their 10Ks and their financials, and you can see they've been underperforming this year. And one of the things to do when you're underperforming is to consolidate. So I think it's an interesting move. It does create a powerhouse. In the Hadoop space, though, I think one could argue that is the Hadoop space as powerful or as much of a necessity now as it was 5 years ago. So that will be interesting to see as well. But I think one of the biggest things I thought of first was, what are they going to name this new company? Thomas, any thoughts on that? Is it going to be Cloudera or Cloudworks? Hortonera? What do you think the company name is going to be? Because it can't be one or the other.
Do you think they'll keep the cloud piece because that's where they see their kind of competition and stuff? I mean, so they want to be able to put a cloud spin on it. I'm not sure. I don't know.
I think they have to.
Yeah, there's definitely not going to be an elephant involved anymore, right?
Well, I think the
Or
elephant's
maybe.
going to stay from the open source standpoint. I mean, they have to, but I think cloud's definitely going to be a part of it. I think,
Yeah.
especially Cloudera has gone. I mean, from the beginning, they've talked about this cloud first strategy, but they've really embraced it over the last couple, quarters. So I think cloud's definitely going to be a part of it, and it has to be at this point. It'll be
They're kind of all
interesting
in
to
on
see where they go.
containers too. What about Docker Works?
Yeah, Docker. Yeah, Cloudera works by Docker or something like that. Yeah, Dockera. There we go. I don't know if you have an idea or a suggestion on what they should name it, put in the comments below. There you go. Put in the comments below. Maybe Cloudera works, which is what I'm going with.
Yeah.
We'll pick it up. Who knows? Or
I mean, they do watch the show, so I mean, if you put it in the comment section here below, it'll probably be seen by Doug Cutting and the team at Cloudera Works or whatever.
So after the naming, because obviously that's the most important part, right? The next thing is what is this as a signal for Hadoop? Not the ecosystem, but just the technology Hadoop. Do you think this is a good signal and almost a reemergence of this technology, or do you think this is kind of an indicator of other technologies still surpassing it? What do you think?
I don't know. I mean, we're still talking about $5 billion. One of the things that I see here, if we looked back on this 5 years ago, right? So 5 years ago, Hortonworks wasn't public, right? For sure, Cloudera wasn't public. So just the fact that we're talking about these large of numbers, and I mean, Hadoop ecosystem as a business, I mean, it's kind of showing still, I believe, Hadoop's growth. Like you're growing up, right? You're growing up. You've got business problems, right? You've got to find a way to kind of get around this. So I don't know. I think it's a good problem for them to have. Versus, I mean, they spent so much time, incubating, right? From a technology perspective, I think this is showing. Still trying to wrap your head around what the business of Hadoop is, but
so it's $5 billion in the merger, but their combined revenue is $700 million. So, I mean, big difference. You're looking at over a 20x multiple. But when you think of some of the other technologies out there, Splunk, for example, we see them growing. We see them surpassing both Hortonworks and Cloudera. So, it bodes to say is Hadoop still, it's probably one of the most talked about big data analytics frameworks out there, but is it still as viable as it was 5 years ago?
Yeah, I think for sure. I mean, I think you look at that ecosystem. I mean, I understand what you're saying. Combined revenue of only $700 million, but I mean, we have to look at what the market's going to pay for it, right? Like if you gave if you gave anybody the opportunity to buy this new company for $700 million, do you think anybody would turn that down? I mean,
no.
I know you.
Yeah.
I know you and I probably don't have the cash to do it, but I mean, anyway,
that's a lot of
the market believes that it still has a lot of value there, right?
Yeah. No. Again, the market's going to pay a premium. They always do. But when we're looking at how long Hadoop has been around and its revenue as opposed to some of the other technologies out there, not saying it's not an important part of the data analytics fabric, but it's just. I guess I think it's a brilliant move because now you consolidate both Cloudera's more proprietary go-to-market and business model and Hortonworks' open source and services-based business model to have a more complementary total package. So I think it's great. I just wonder, what does this mean for Hadoop down the road?
Yeah, and this is kind of why I go back to, and I kind of harp on this a lot. I mean, you say Hadoop's been around a long time, but that's why we talk about the ecosystem. So yes, Hadoop's been around a long time, but technologies like Spark and Flink, they're still, I would say, relatively new, and there are new pieces that are coming too, like the streaming analytics piece and what Hortonworks and Cloudera have kind of doubled down with some of their new platforms and new pieces there. Those are fairly new, right?
Yep.
Those have a lot of growth and other pieces too. So it's evolving, and that's why I like to say Hadoop from an ecosystem, because you're right. But like I said, it's showing growth and it's showing maturity, right? There's still things that have to happen, right? What's going to happen with IoT? I mean, we've all seen the numbers, right? People are still going to have to analyze, be able to analyze the data. I think where both companies, and I will just say, Hadoop as a whole, where they've really struggled with the end user is their user and their community is mostly data engineers and developers, right? I mean, that's who they keyed for, and they didn't have a way to kind of show the business of, hey, this is the value that you're getting, right? We're a company like Splunk or H2O or some of the other places where you have these dashboards that you can build and you can show, out the gate day one. That's something that you show the CIO. I mean, I've never walked into a meeting and talked to the CIO and showed them some code to be like, hey man, this is Hadoop. This is pretty cool. You know what I'm saying? I mean, if I did do that, I mean, I wouldn't have a long meeting, right?
Well, and so that goes to, when you're bringing these two companies together, what do they bring to the table? And lately I've noticed Cloudera has been focusing more and more on AI, machine learning with their data science workbench and some of the other tools. And then I think Hortonworks has been focusing on a lot of this edge to core, right? With, was it HDF and some of the other technologies out there that maybe bring this together will give a even more complementary portfolio of options from IoT to AI, from edge to core, and then to cloud as well. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think. I mean, even you were talking about HDF and some of the things that Hortonworks has done from edge to cloud, but Cloudera's been trying to push for some of that too, right? And part of the thing is you go back to the competition from the cloud, but Cloudera has been working really hard to be able to go back and be able to, hey, I've got my data, or I've got these models, and I've got my Cloudera CDH stuff running here on prem, be able to push it out to the cloud and make that kind of seamless, right? So that to prevent the cloud lock-in and kind of attack it from that perspective too. So I think there's a lot of synergy around some of the tools, but like you said, there are some other parts. It's going to be interesting. I mean, even Hortonworks had how many SQL engines, right? I mean,
exactly.
So it's going to be interesting to see what wins and what wins out, what doesn't win out.
So with all mergers, there's a rationalization. I think let's start with their portfolio. What do you think is going to stay? What do you think is going to be maybe phased out from their joint portfolio now? There's a merger. Any products that you think is going to be kind of put by the wayside?
Yeah, I think there's going to be a merger of one. I really think, and it's hard for me. I've seen some news that maybe want to change my opinion a little bit, but just Hortonworks and HDPs, they're so close to the open source, right? And then obviously, a few years back, they consumed and pulled in Pivotal's Hadoop platform. And then just recently, I think it was last year, they pulled in Big Insights. So I just have a hard time seeing so much of what Hortonworks and HDP has going away to be CDH.
Yeah, and
part of it, part of that might be biased. I've done more with HDP and with Hortonworks for many years, and I've been involved since 1.0 days. But just for me to see that, to see how much and the way that they are from the open source community, I have a hard time seeing it kind of being phased out versus I think Ambari and the advancements there, I think that kind of staying. So I don't know. I can't make I can't make it. And there's so much with Hive and some other stuff. But Cloudera's not going to get rid of and Impala's not going to go away. What are they going to do with Kudu? I don't know. I mean, how much does Kudu kind of came on? But they bought it with an acquisition. It's hard to say right now.
And their Navigator tools are all going to stay as well. I mean,
and the thing is, so many of these are open source, Brett, that. I mean, even if the new company kind of gets rid of them, there's going to be so many people that are supporting it out there. I mean, just look at so many products from previous years that like how many different flavors of Linux are there?
Yeah,
and how many companies use them, right? I mean, so there's still going to be support, and you never know. I mean, I don't know. It's just going to be interesting.
And I think Hortonworks and Cloudera, although competitors, also were bigger in different markets, right? Different industries.
Sure.
And so I think now with this merger, maybe there's less competition in the overlay, but you're still going to offer the products that matter or are more competitive for certain industries, like oil and gas versus the financials, right? Navigator was very popular, and like Cloudera is very popular in financials, but maybe for some of these other ones, open source makes more sense. But Thomas, you mentioned the ecosystem. Obviously, open source contributors, Cloudera and Hortonworks are two of the top contributors. Yep. Do you think this changes any development? Do you think it intensifies it, or kind of maybe pulls back a little bit?
I think with all mergers, acquisitions, kind of however this is being framed, some people are going to like it, some people aren't going to like it internally. And I think just with so much talent being there and so much of a key on open source, I would not be surprised if some of the engineers or there's another spinoff kind of this, right? I mean, so yeah, I don't know. I think if they don't stay close enough to the open source, I definitely think heck, look at how Kinesis and some of the other cloud platform and cloud applications work. I mean, they're going to take pieces of that open source. So I don't know. There's a ton of talent between the two companies, and there's a good opportunity here for them to do some amazing things. But like I said, with all mergers and acquisitions, you kind of normally see kind of a spinoff, a little bit.
Yeah, so before we get into our predictions, last question. Appbar. It's been around, not as much as we've seen. Obviously, Cloudera and Hortonworks were 1 and 2, depending on how you looked at it. Do you think this is good, bad, or ugly from Appbar?
I think in the short term, if I were there, it makes them more relevant, right? It gives them to be the alternative to, hey, you still wanting to work with the Hadoop and Hadoop ecosystem, in your own environment, but you don't want to go down Cloudera, you don't want to go down HTTP, or maybe if you've got some of the customers, they weren't just really happy with their version of HTTP or CDH. If I were working from Appbar, I'd be in there talking to them, being like, hey man, we don't know what's going on with this, right? They're going to put some Frankenstein thing that works, and so I think that gives them more ammo to kind of go against it. I think there were some. I wish I had it here, but there were some comments on Twitter, or on somebody had interviewed the CEO, I think, of Appbar, and he was talking about it kind of that he was saying that the open source piece had I don't want to misquote him, but he was kind of taking a stab towards the open source and some of the other things of just how Hadoop and the Hadoop ecosystem was done between those two companies. And I mean, it's business, right? I said, Hadoop's grown up now, grown up problems.
Yeah, I think what is going to go well for Appbar, or at least in the short term, is they go from being one of 3 to try and engage customers and win a deal to one of 2.
Yeah, they're in the top 2 now.
Yeah, they're in top 2. At least they're an alternative overnight. Other than that, I think they have they're going to have some challenges to kind of represent against them. All right, so prediction time, and maybe a year from now we'll do another recording saying to see if our predictions were even in the ballpark. But just give me 2 to 3 predictions that you see with this merger.
I see a lot of excitement in the near term and midterm. Really, just without knowing kind of where they go. So I will say in the next 6 months to a year, there's going to be a lot of excitement, a lot of more engagement for the Hadoop and the Hadoop ecosystem than we've had in the past few years. But I will say in the next year, there will be another spinoff. I believe there will be some kind of spinoff, and maybe it's a totally open source. Maybe it's not even a company, right? It could be just a different platform that's still going to be supported. Like there's still pieces of Pivotal's PD. I think their Hadoop platform out there kind of supported. So my prediction is a lot of excitement, a lot of re-engagement in the next six months to a year. And then 2, I think there's going to be some kind of spinoff, some kind of alternative, or whether it would just be fully open source. I don't know that it'll be a full IPO company. That's not what I'm saying, but something there.
All right. So I think first and foremost, when you have the top 2 companies in any area, I think there's going to be a lot of monopoly conversations, and this still needs to be approved. I don't think it's been approved yet. So I think the first prediction is it's going to be an uphill battle to get this approved by the SEC. I think it will go through. I think that there's enough competitors outside of the Hadoop ecosystem that will make it go through. But I still think there's already some talk about that. I think that will put some pressure. But I do think that, and we've already seen this, there's been a pop in Cloudera stock, that the excitement of consolidating the top 2 competitors is going to provide this joint company with more cash flow, more investment, and that will allow them to make more investments to, I think, round out their current portfolio, or at least do some portfolio rationalization and then add some investments to it. So I think they got to be very diligent. This is a big merger. It's $5 billion, but it's 2 companies that had 2 different business models. So they're going to need to be very rational about it. But I think injection of revenue, or I guess of investment, is going to help them with that. So those are my 2. There's going to be monopoly talk, and I think added investment's going to help them kind of round out their portfolio.
So are you buying their stock? Is that what you're saying here?
We
make stock predictions on this.
I am not buying nor recommending or anything, or not.
Are you a certified CPA? Do we have to do that little disclaimer now?
Yeah, I'm not buying nor recommending or not recommending. I think do your due diligence. What I am recommending, though, is you continue to follow us. If you like this video, press like down below. Follow us on YouTube. write us some comments. What do you think some of your predictions are? Are we totally off base, or are we actually kind of in line with what you think? Let us know. And we'll do a wrap-up video a year from now to show how off our rocker we actually were. So, Thomas, as always, it's a pleasure chatting with you about this. I know you're very passionate about Hadoop. I am as well. I was blown back. I'm excited about this, and I'm looking forward to see what this does for the data analytics fabric ecosystem. So thanks a lot, Thomas.
Exciting news. Thanks again.
See ya.